Hi, this is Vedashri Somani, and today I'm going to tell you the story of The Secret Seven, which is the first book in the 15-book series written by Enid Blyton. So, The Secret Seven Society is a detective society made by children. There are 7 children of 11 to 14 years of age. There is Peter, who is the leader of the group, Janet, Peter's sister, Jack, George, Collins, Barbara, and Pamela. And Janet and Peter have a pet dog named Scamper. So these 7 children and Scamper together form the Secret 7 Society. And they are not a secret society just for namesake, but they have badges with SS written on it and passwords through which they gain access to their meetings. And Peter is very particular that everyone should remember the passwords and carry their badges to all their meetings. So let's start with our story. So winter vacation was going on. Peter and Janet were in their house. Peter suggested Janet, why don't we call a Secret 7 meeting since we've not had one since a quite long time. So Janet got very excited and sprung up and said, yes, we definitely should have one. So then they wrote letters for the other 5 people and delivered it to them. Next morning at 10 o'clock, they met in the shed near Peter and Janet's house. Everyone had their badges on and said the passwords. While coming in, Colin shouted out the password when Peter asked him. So Peter got a bit irritated, as if anyone was nearby, they would have heard their password. And Jack, who never remembered any of their passwords, tricked it out of Colin, and all of them were in the shed. So first of all, Peter said that we need to find a new password as Colin has given out the earlier one. So all of them thought, and Jack came up with an idea that why don't we keep the password as weekdays, as there are 7 days in a week and 7 members in our group. So then all of them agreed, and the next password was weekdays. They had lemonade and snacks, and while eating, all of them thought had anyone had any mystery or activity to do, but no one had any activity. So then they decided that everyone would look out, and if they found anything that the Secret 7 could do, they would write it in a note and put it in the shed. Every day, Peter and Janet would check the shed, and if they found anything, they would call a Secret 7 meeting. So after that, their meeting was over. They decided to go and make snowmen near the river. So all of them went there. They carried some rugs and caps and jackets to decorate the snowmen. They made 4 snowmen. They put buttons with stones, eyes, stones, and then they put hands and legs with twigs. They also put jackets and caps on top of the snowmen, and they were looking so real that anyone could have thought that they were real people. They had a lot of fun. While going home, across the street they saw an old large house, and there was only one caretaker living in it. The caretaker was very short-tempered. He was a bit deaf and old. So while they were looking at their house, Scamper ran through the gates and went into the yard in front of the house. The caretaker came out saying, "Go away! I don't want your dog and you all people irritating me over here." And he got his stick to hit the dog. But then Peter came in the way and saved Scamper, and they went. In the evening, Jack realized that his badge had dropped down somewhere. At his house, there was his little sister Susie and her nanny. His mother had gone out, so he would have to ask the nanny to make a new one. And the nanny was very strict, and so Jack thought that she wouldn't make him one. So he went to ask the nanny if he could go out and find his badge, but the nanny said, "No, you cannot go out." So he went, and he decided that at night, when everyone was asleep, he would go out and find for his badge. Around 9:30, when everyone was asleep, he went out with a torch and searched for his badge. He came near the place where they were making snowmen, and over there he found his badge. So while coming back, he saw headlights and he had seen a car, and suddenly his torch flickered and shut off. So he thought that the car had lost his way as there was no way ahead, it was a dead end. So he went near the car thinking that he would tell them that they're the wrong way and get them to the right path. But as he reached closer, two men got out of the car and he saw a car was towing a cage, a box like something behind it. So he went near the car and he hid behind the hedge. The car had stopped in front of the old house. So over there he heard the two men in low voices. They were discussing something. And one of them came and switched on his torch and searched if anyone was nearby. And he screamed, "Who is there? Who is there? Come out of there." And then suddenly he laughed and said, "Oh, snowmen, must be kids' work." And he went away. Jack got so scared he thought that he would be caught. But the snowmen had saved him. So then he got up and started to run as he was very scared. He thought that the men were dangerous and they had almost caught him. So he started to run. And while running, he heard some noises like unbolting of that cage which he saw behind the car was towing. And after that he heard squealing and snorting sounds. He was so scared that he didn't bother to look what was happening. And he ran away home. He ran straight to the house and then realized that this is something that we need to search for. He thought that he should inform the Secret Seven. So he wrote a note and put it in the shed. Next morning, Janet found the note and called a Secret Seven meeting. So Jack told everyone what had happened last night, and they said that we really need to see what had happened, who was there. And they distributed the work. George and Pamela went to check out who the house belonged to. They first went to the post office thinking that they would find something there. But the postman said he had no idea, and then they went to the registrar office where all the houses were listed of that area. The men sitting there told him that the house belonged to Mr. J. Holikoff, and he told the address of that person. Janet and Barbara were observing the tire tracks. They noticed that the tire tracks were wide and they were a bit different from normal cars. They followed the tracks and they noticed that the car had it had stopped in front of the house. It went ahead, took a U-turn and came back up. Peter, Jack and Collins had gone to interview the caretaker to ask him that had he seen anything that night. While going, they saw footprints of Peter and Scamper of the last morning when they had come into the yard. And with that were big footprints which led to the back door of near the kitchen. They called the caretaker and asked him had he seen something. So at first the caretaker said, "No, I had not heard anything or I had not seen anything." They still kept on asking, and then the caretaker said, "I had heard some muffling, some noises, some squealing noises, but I often keep on getting those noises. So I thought there was nothing to worry about it." And then they showed him the tracks, the footprints which had led to the door. And they asked him if he knew anything more, did they come in the house? Caretaker said no one came into the house. He was getting a bit irritated and the children asked him that could they check into the house. So the caretaker got very angry and irritated. He thought that these children were playing a mischief on him, as he kept on often hearing those sounds and he thought the footprints were made by the children. He was very irritated. He got his big stick and shoved them off away. So all of them in the afternoon met in the shed and discussed what they had found. Jack suddenly got an idea that if there was any prisoner in that house, the people would again come to feed or give food to the prisoner and keep an eye on him. So at night, they dressed themselves up as snowmen. They wore white clothes and they painted their faces white too. And at 9 o'clock, they went. 4 of them had only gone. The boys, Jack, Peter, George and Collins. They had took Scamper along with them so that if anything bad happened, Scamper could bark and bite. So they hid among the snowmen. They waited quite a long time and they were getting cold because of the snow. So then Colin asked, could we move a bit because we are very cold? And suddenly they heard noises, the snorting and squealing noises again. And they were not sounding good. So Peter said that we must go and check in. There is something up going in that house. So Peter and Jack went ahead into the house and the other two remained outside to keep a watch. The door was locked, so they could not enter into the house. But they saw a window, a broken window through which they could enter. So they entered through the window. Peter switched on his torch and they searched in all the rooms to see if the prisoner was there. But nothing they found. Then suddenly they heard the noises again. And then they noticed that the noises were coming from below them. There was a cellar right below them. So they were very scared to go in as they didn't know who was in there. They asked, who is there? But no response came. And then they heard the noise of the engine of the car. They got to know that the burglars had come. So then they closed the cellar and hid themselves. Peter and Jack thought that they would go straight into the cellar. But no. They thought to search in the house first to see if the caretaker was awake. They searched the house, they came down and they saw the white faces of Peter and Jack. And they caught those two. So they pulled the collar and asked, what are you doing here? Why are you here? They said that we know that you have kept a prisoner in the cellar and we had come to watch on you. So then they threw them into a cupboard and locked the door. But Peter and Jack could still hear what was going outside. So they heard the burglars talking that we need to take Carrie Blue away. So day after tomorrow we'll take him and put those two children into the cellar. And then after that they were boiling something with some very bad smell. And they opened the cupboard of Peter and Jack. They pulled them out and said, you cannot leave from here now, y'all, and they threw them into the cellar. So Peter and Jack were with the Carrie Blue named prisoner in the cellar. And the burglars came out of the house and left. In there, they saw a beautiful race horse. They were very surprised seeing a horse as a prisoner. So they thought that why must they have kept a horse in here? They touched the horse and understood that they had dyed him. So the smell which was coming was of the dye. And everything matched, like the snorting sounds and the footprints, everything matched the horse. They got to know that the people were going to paint the horse and then sell it as another horse. So they were in there locked. Outside, Jack and Collins saw the burglars go away. They waited for some more time, and as Peter and Jack did not come out, they decided to go inside and check out for themselves, like where were Peter and Jack. They went in and Peter and Jack screamed, here, we are here, down below you. They opened the cellar and all three of them came out, Carrie Blue and Peter and Jack. Even Colin and George were surprised seeing a horse as the prisoner. But then all of them came out of the house and went home. And the next morning, they narrated all the story to their parents. The parents called the police. Children narrated the whole story also to the police. And the police was very impressed. Then they asked that we will have to investigate and search who the house was and who the house belonged to and the tire tracks, whose car was that. Then George said, yes, we, George and Pamela, had found the house belonged to J. Holikoff and gave the address. And Janet also showed the rough sketch of the tire tracks which she had made. The policemen were very impressed. Y'all have also done half of our investigation. They said that we will find out the burglars and Mr. J. Holikoff if he had a horse box and the tire prints matched, then he would have to answer some very awkward questions. And they left. Next morning, Peter's parents had called a meeting in the shed, and they told the children that the policemen had found the burglars and Mr. J. Horikoff was the culprit. The horse belonged to Mr. Colonel James Healy and was returned to them. Peter's father also gave them envelopes, and there were 7 tickets of a circus gifted to them by the owner of the horse, which was Colonel James Healy. And they were very happy and enjoyed the rest of the day. So that is the end of the story. I hope you liked the story. We'll meet soon again with some other book. So bye!